Welcome to the bottom line on City Watch LA.
Great to be with you.
This is Miran Kalaydjian. California faces enormous challenges from affordability and public safety to homelessness, education, and government accountability. Today, we will discuss those issues with one of the candidates seeking to lead the state forward. Joining us is Steve Hilton, candidate for Governor of California and former senior policy advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron. Steve, welcome to the bottom line.
Wonderful to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to have you with us. And my first question is, California has enormous wealth and talent, yet many residents believe the state is becoming less affordable, less safe, and less accountable. What especially has failed, and why are you the candidate who can fix it?
Well, thank you very much, Miran. There's a really simple one-word answer to that, I'm afraid, which is everything, which is, I know, a little bit simplistic, and we can dig into that, but that's the real truth. And exactly as you said, the number one indicator of what a failure it's been is this incredible state of ours that we love so much, with all our natural beauty and the best weather and the great cities and countries, amazing, opportunities in California in so many different ways, universities, the cultures, the food, all these things. And yet we have, in the last 7 years, CNN pointed out, Fareed Zakaria, nearly 2 million people, 1.9 million people on net have left California. So why would anyone leave such an amazing state as California? Because we've made it so difficult to live here, to operate a business here, to do anything here. And you see an exodus of businesses and so on. And so let's unpack why I think, justified in saying everything that's gone wrong. Everything has gone wrong. Right now in California, we have the highest poverty rate in America, the highest unemployment rate of all 50 states, the highest cost of living by far, if you break that down, highest gas prices, electric bills, utilities generally, insurance, housing costs, the highest in the country, lowest home ownership. We've got US News and World Report ranks California 50th out of 50 states for opportunity. Chief Executive Magazine ranks California 50th out of 50 states for business climate. We were just ranked by Consumer Affairs 50th out of 50 states on public safety, the most dangerous state in the country. So everywhere you look, we have the highest taxes for the worst results, the highest homelessness crisis. Everything is really a disaster. And that's what you get from 16 years of one-party rule. You've had one party controlling everything, all the statewide elected offices, all the cities and counties, the major cities and counties, the state legislature with a 2/3 majority, the state Supreme Court with a 6-1 majority. So they've had it all their own way. No checks, no balances. What's the result? You have an ideological extremism that has created this ridiculous, bloated, nanny state bureaucratic government that's telling us how to live, how to run our lives, how to run our businesses, how to raise our kids, what kind of car to drive, what kind of house to live in, how to cook our food. They want to ban gas stoves. Well, they're just raising the cost of doing everything and the hassle of doing everything. It's a combination of taxes, costs, fees, bureaucracy, lawsuits, litigation that makes everything impossible. And so that combination of things driven by this ideological extremism, combined with the fact that after all this time of this political machine being in power, it produces people who are good at navigating the machine instead of actually changing things. So these machine bureaucratic politicians like Karen Bass, like my opponent, Javier Becerra, who said very clearly he's not going to change anything in California. Well, it is time for change. We are saying very clearly, enough is enough. Let's fix California.
Well, my second question is, on your first day as governor, what 3 executive actions or directives would you issue?
Well, I think I want to answer that by just taking a step back and looking at the kind of focus of my campaign. I mean, you can put it in 2 words, really: Cal-affordable and Cal-future. What I mean by Cal-affordable is a set of simple, common sense things that will make life better, especially for regular working people in California. $3 gas, cut utility bills in half, your first 150 grand tax-free, starter homes for young families. Cal-future, what does that mean? We want to give our kids a bright future here where you can get well educated, start and run a business, build your dreams. So we need a better education system. Every student reads by third grade. Skills training in every school. Cut the regulations that have caused so much bloat and massive cost for business. And abolish. I'm a small business owner. That's my background. I've worked inside of the government, as you mentioned, and I've been a host on TV, but most of my career has been in business. And one thing that really offends me, the fact that for every small business in California, the government's charging you $800 a year just for existing. That's outrageous. We're going to scrap that. So that's the heart of my plan. And what we're going to do is put in place both some of that is through the budget. I'm going to send a budget to the legislature that includes the tax cut and some of those other measures. And in terms of the executive actions and the regulations, it's going to be more than three because we're going to be taking action to reduce gas prices immediately. We're going to be taking action to end nuisance lawsuits for businesses, PAGA lawsuits, for example, through the appointment of a new labor commissioner. We're going to be opening up California oil production through new appointments to CalGEM, the California Geologic and Energy Management that's shutting down our oil industry, and so on. So there's a really, really serious set of changes. And you're right to focus on the executive action because that's actually how we make a lot of this change happen. The governor controls the executive branch. You have thousands of appointments to hundreds of agencies, and it's really going to start very, very aggressively on day one.
Candidates often campaign broad promises. What is the single commitment voters should use to judge whether Hilton administration succeeds or fails?
Well, I want to go back to where we started. The number one thing I think is that people are moving back to California instead of leaving California. That's the metric I want to look at, which is now people have stopped leaving, businesses are coming back, people are coming back. We are once again the best place, not just in America, but in the world, to start and raise a family, to start and run and grow a business. That's my vision for California. You could say restoring the California dream.
California has some of the nation's highest housing, energy, insurance, and tax costs. What would you do in your first year to put actual money back into the pockets of working families?
Well, it's not some of the highest costs, it's the highest costs. They're the highest. You take gas prices, we're highest in the country, higher than Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, even though we have abundant oil reserves. It's crazy. And so I think that on all of these things, we're not just doing badly, we're doing worse than any other country, any other state. If you look at the question you asked about tax, I'm really happy you asked that because that's actually what I always say, the simplest, quickest way we can put money in people's pockets is for the government to take less out in the first place. And that's the plan. And I want to focus on the people who've really been hurt the most by these policies for so long, which is working class Californians. They've really been hurt. And so that's why we start with a tax cut of 150, your first 150 grand, no state income tax. It's completely outrageous to me that you have people earning money that really doesn't get you very far in California, just over 70 grand, and you're paying 9.3% state income tax. That's outrageous. That's higher than the top rate in most states. You got the state taking nearly 10% of your income. Absolutely unacceptable. And so, and also it's not even giving you good results. We have the homelessness and the worst roads in the country and all these things. And so that's the starting point. But there's other ways we can stop taxing you so much. For example, I've promised to cap the gouging on vehicle registration. Registering your car or truck every year in California costs hundreds, sometimes over $1,000, sometimes over $2,000 for people. In other states, it's under 100, and that's what we're going to be in California. Vehicle registration will be capped at $71 per vehicle per year. That's a very concrete thing that will help every Californian.
Businesses and residents continue to leave California. Is that primarily a tax problem, a regulatory problem, or a leadership problem? And what would you change immediately?
It's tax and regulation and litigation. That's a really big part of it that isn't discussed enough. Lawsuits. If you operate in California as a business, you're going to be hit by lawsuits, ridiculous lawsuits for everything. One of the reasons for that is that the lawyers who make money from these lawsuits, they are very wealthy donors to the Democratic Party, the trial lawyers as they're known. And so they're one of the main donors to Democrat politicians. So they keep uh, bribing them to introduce laws that help lawyers file more, give more rights of action that you can file lawsuits under, whether that's workers' comp or PAGA, the Private Attorney General Act for wage and hour claims, or disability or whatever, all these things. It's just completely off the charts, ridiculous. And so one of the things we're going to do there is change the regulations around lawsuits so that if you lose, you pay. That'll disincentivize a lot of lawsuits. We're going to end PAGA lawsuits by appointing a labor commissioner who will stop that on day one. Um, on regulations, I mean, that's going to be a long job of cutting back the different regulations, but we need to do it. The regulatory code has just got completely bloated. For example, it costs 2 or 3 times as much to build the exact same building in California as it does in a neighboring state just because of the building codes. So all of these things need to be simplified and reduced because it's taxes, regulation, and litigation that are driving business out.
California's housing shortage has been discussed for years, but production remains far below demand. What state rules are blocking construction, and what are you willing to confront both local governments and powerful interest groups to change them?
Well, the main thing that I mean, there's not actually they're wrong to say main thing. There's a number of things. Number why things aren't being built, and when they are built, they're so expensive. Here's another thing that people don't know about and the cost is impact fees. So I'm sure most people have never heard of impact fees. They are they're named because they're taxes that are charged on building housing. And it used to be because of the impact. You know, you build a house, you have an impact on the local community, you pay a fee. It used to be, 5, 10 grand, something very small. Now, you see Berkeley Turner Center on Housing estimates that it's up to 20% of the cost of a new home. It's ridiculous. So we got to cap impact fees. That's one thing on the cost side. And also, I've mentioned the building codes. That's on the cost side. In terms of construction, I think that there's two big things we need to change. First of all, again, it's the litigation, the lawsuits. So there's something called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. It was passed in 1970, and it was supposed to be there to protect against pollution and factories and whatever. Now it's being used for everything, abused for everything, because they've given what's called a private right of action under CEQA. Anyone can file a CEQA lawsuit as if they were the attorney general or district attorney. 70% of CEQA lawsuits are used to block housing. 70%. And they're mostly filed by the unions. And the unions use them as leverage against house builders and developers to negotiate what they call project labor agreements. So let's say a developer wants to build some houses, the unions file a lawsuit on some fake environmental thing, and then they say to the developer, we'll drop the lawsuit if you give us this, a project labor agreement. It's a blackmail. It's a negotiating tactic. And so then you look at what's in those agreements, the project labor agreements, it just drives up the cost. You have union workers only, that's called skilled and trained workers, it's a euphemism. And it's also prevailing wage is usually part of it, that's like 2 or 3 times market rate wages. All of that adds to the cost. And so we've got to stop these nuisance lawsuits that block housing because it's just adding to the delay and the hassle. And a lot of developers just give up. They say, why should I bother? I'm not going to fight this. It's just too much hassle. And then the second big thing is zoning, and in particular, the attitude that we can't build outwards. We can't expand the area that's developed, the land that's developed. We can only build within the current development footprint. And that means we have to build upwards, apartment buildings. We can't have single family homes. I could completely disagree with that. This is based on an ideology called density, where they say, if you build outwards single family homes, that's bad for the climate. That's sprawl. People will drive more their cars and it's bad. But there's no evidence it makes any difference to climate. It's just they don't like it. And what they have a vision of people living in California, like in Europe, in dense cities, using public transportation, walking and cycling. That's their vision. But it's like imposing an ideology on a reality that's completely different. That is not how California developed. California developed with a car culture, spread out, single family homes so people could enjoy the weather and the sunshine with their family. That's us, that's California. So they call it sprawl. I call it the California dream. And I want to see more of it. So we have to relax those rules. And when they say we need more density, we already have the highest density in the country. Only 7% of our land is developed in California. That's the lowest in America. You could go to eight, add 1%, 8%, and it would still be, and you'd have room for 10,000, sorry, you'd have room for 10 million single family homes. Sorry, 10 million households in single family homes on quarter acre lots, which is very big. So we've got huge amounts of space. I'm on the road the whole time in California, probably more than anyone else. And I see all these areas where you could build amazing new places and cities and towns and suburbs. And so we've got plenty of space to build in California. We just need to get over the ideology that says it's bad for the climate. It's not.
California moved from record surpluses to multi-billion-dollar deficits. Was that a policy failure, a spending failure, or both?
Both. I mean, and it's part of the machine, the corrupt machine that runs California because they keep getting, the unions, who fund the Democrat politicians keep negotiating extra, pensions and healthcare and all these things that normal workers don't get, and that we're paying for. And that's part of it. So there's the corruption angle. Also, they're just wasting money in all this bureaucracy and bloat. For example, I spoke to a lady who runs a company that builds roads, construction company, across the country, everywhere across the country. And she said it costs 4 times as much to build the exact same equivalent piece of road in California as it does in Texas. 4 times as much. So our money's just not going very far. Why is that? Because of all these, you've got to have a project labor agreement, a community workforce agreement, local environmental review, regional environmental inspections, state environmental, it's just endless bloat nonsense from the government that makes it so time consuming and expensive. And so the cost that's gone up is partly actual directly wasting money on programs that just should not exist. Like, I think it's not right to take money from hardworking California taxpayers who can barely afford their healthcare and give it to citizens of other countries for free healthcare, which is what we're doing now. I think that we found a lot of examples of fraud and waste and abuse in our budget, which we added up to $425 billion a year. Over 5 years, that's $80 billion a year. So there's money that you can stop spending. I mean, they've doubled the budget in the last 10 years. Everything's worse. So it's a combination of corruption and special interests and inefficiency, incompetence, having people who don't know how to run things in charge. There's a whole lot of reasons, but it's a lot of money that's been spent, and we need to rein that in and stop the bloat and stop the massive ballooning of the budget so we can cut taxes.
California has spent tens of billions of dollars on homelessness, yet encampments remain widespread. Who should be held accountable for the lack of results?
Well, it's state and local politicians. So in 2016, they passed a law called Housing First. Housing First dictates that any money being spent on homelessness can't be used for any facility that requires sobriety. And there's a huge problem there when the fact that 80% of people who are homeless have drug addiction or mental health problems or some combination. And so they've effectively made it illegal to solve the problem. If you're a charity or faith-based group and you're trying to help homeless street addicts get their lives back on track by getting them sober and into recovery, you don't qualify for state money. That's what we call the homeless industrial complex, where all these billions of dollars have gone into these nonprofits that are just keeping the problem going. They're not actually solving the problem. They're not getting people off drugs. And they're spending their money on these, what they call permanent supportive housing, which are these housing units, basically an apartment, costing $1 million. And they put in there someone who's addicted to fentanyl. Well, how's that going to work? They just take drugs and then it doesn't solve the problem. They go back to the street. I was with a faith-based group in Venice that was dealing with homelessness and street addicts. They said that these housing units costing $1 million, they're basically second homes for homeless people. It's just because they're on the street doing drugs. Got to get them off the street. That's the point. No one's going to get their life back on track living in those conditions. So my plan is very simple, 3-point plan. Number one, get people off the street. Number two, get people off drugs. Number three, get people the mental health care that they need.
I'm going to give you another question. What would your homelessness policy require from individuals living on the streets, especially when mental illness, addiction, or repeated refusal of shelter is involved?
Well, you can't allow it to continue because it's not just, I hear all the time about the rights of the homeless. What about the rights of regular people trying to take their kids to school who are having to step over, dead addicts in the street or needles everywhere or the squalor? I mean, it's just not okay. It's not acceptable. Enough is enough, really. So that step one is you have to clear the streets. We don't see this in other states. You don't see this in other countries. This is not normal. This is California insane ideology. And it's so infuriating. I mean, I go to these places all the time. I was on Skid Row the other week. I've been there many times. It's infuriating. Like these absolutely horrific conditions, worse than any third world slum. Right here in what they love to say is the fourth biggest economy in the world, the richest state in the richest country on earth. And we have these third world conditions everywhere. It is unacceptable. And so I've said very clearly that I will remove that. And if local, I'll give local politicians the chance, right? I believe in decentralizing power. I believe that local people should be generally in control of things, but it can't go on forever. And if I'll give them a deadline, Karen Bass, all these people, whoever's the mayor, and say, look, you've got till whatever date, but it will be in months, not years, to clean this up. And if you haven't done it, then I will use state law enforcement resources to remove homeless encampments in California. It'll get cleaned up by the end of my first year in office.
Police departments across California are struggling with recruitment, retention, and public trust. How would you increase the staffing while also demanding accountability and constitutional policing?
Well, I do think it's very important, going back to what I said earlier, that we see this through the proper, lens, as it were, of decentralized power. I don't run police forces in California, and I shouldn't try to. That's the responsibility of local police departments, and they're accountable in different ways. You've got sheriff's departments in the counties. You've got mayors. It's a very decentralized picture, and that's how it should be. I think from my point of view, what I can do as governor is make sure that we are not undermining law enforcement. I mean, that's the problem. You've had these politicians for years. They've been spewing all this stuff, Black Lives Matter, defund the police, all these things that have, undermined people's confidence in in law enforcement, undermined law enforcement's morale. And I think that's what needs to change. So you're going to have a governor who actually supports law enforcement without, losing sight of the fact that you're right, the accountability is important. You have to make sure that we have real results from the money that we're putting into policing. But I think most police forces and police departments want to do that.
Governors face pressure from party leaders, donors, unions, corporation, and advocacy groups. Tell us about one issue on which you would be willing to disappoint your own political supporters to do what you believe is right for California.
Well, it's an interesting one because my political supporters are right across the board. It's not just Republicans. I'm running as a Republican, but I've got many independents and Democrats supporting me. So in a way, I'm I don't want to dodge the question, but I'm really focused on the common ground and common sense. Like, what are the specific things where we can agree? And let's not worry about all the areas where we disagree. So I'm trying to build a coalition behind that from different parties and independents. I mean, I will say, you could say I've disagreed with the president on his team on a couple of things recently. I was very strongly against the action of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission Chair Brendan Carr, supporting the idea that we should eliminate landlines in California. I don't agree with that. I didn't agree with the idea that we should remove that the federal government would remove customs and border protection from California airports in retaliation for other policy disagreements. I think that, the idea that there's no international flights to California is unacceptable to me. And I think there are a number of things, where, I think I will say what I think and what I think is in the best interest of Californians.
My final question. You are asking Californians to trust you with the future of the state. If you return to this program 4 years from now, what three promises should voters hold you accountable for, and what should they conclude if you fail to deliver?
Well, number one will be the overall one, which is people coming back to California, people moving back to California, businesses moving back to California. I really want to make sure that we get gas prices down. So my target is $3 gas. I want to get that. I want to make that happen one way or the other. And I want to the number one thing really that underlies a lot of this is the business climate and the regulatory nightmare that businesses have to go under. Because I've met so many business people that have said to me like almost every day I meet someone and they say, look, if you don't win, we're out. And I think that the exodus of businesses from California will turn into a stampede to leave if we don't win in November. So I really think turning around the business climate so businesses are moving back in is going to be a very important priority.
Steve Hilton, thank you for joining me today on the bottom line here on City Watch LA. I appreciate your time and your willingness to discuss the issues that matter most to Californians. And to all our readers, stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking the questions that hold our leaders accountable. I am Miran Kalaydjian. Until next time, this is the bottom line, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you. What a great
Thank you.
conversation.